I'll start by introducing myself a little bit. I am Lara Brainer-Banker, and I am the creative director here at Achieve. So what I do is take our clients and help them come up with a creative strategy for their campaigns. So it could be an awareness campaign, it could be a campaign for support, which might revolve around fundraising, it might revolve around volunteers. I work with clients to help them figure out how they can visually communicate their message in a clear and concise way to their constituents. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to walk through some important things to know about fundraising just as an overview, and then I'm also going to walk through a few trends that are popular and current and why you may or may not choose some of those trends for your fundraising campaign. And then I'm going to close with examples of different direct mail pieces, emails, things that you might use for your campaigns this year. If you do have questions, feel free to type them into the question box, and I will actually answer all of the questions at the end of the session here, but I'm happy to take any questions you might have. I'll just look at them at the end of the session. Let's get started. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about direct mail. A lot of times when we think about fundraising, we think about direct mail pieces because that's the traditional approach of how you might build a constituent base. And direct mail, it's a common conversation among nonprofits and among fundraisers because oftentimes people are having this disagreement of, is it dead? Is it useful? Is it bringing in money? Where is direct mail at? And it seems a little bit counterintuitive, but direct mail is in fact alive. It's still effective. It's still a good way to raise money. It still produces results. So I'm sort of going to start this whole webinar by saying, use that as part of your components when you're thinking about fundraising. It's not necessarily a bad way to go. We would encourage to do a multi-channel approach to not only do direct mail, maybe think about email and website and social media and some of these other things. But as we're seeing through our research and through watching and testing with our own clients, direct mail is in fact alive and it brings results. And that's what's important for just a basic overview of fundraising. Another thing to note just on an overarching fundraising level is mobile. So when you're thinking about sending emails or bringing in support through mobile, keep in mind that when people are interacting in the digital space, whether it's social media or through emails, a lot of them are going to be looking at it on their mobile phones. And so when you're thinking about your campaigns and how you're going to frame them moving forward, consider that as something, look at your emails on your phone, look at the social media site that you have on your phone and test it, see if it's user friendly, see if it makes sense, maybe have a friend look at it and make sure that you're connecting with that audience on a mobile level as well. So when we're talking about approach to fundraising, assumptions only get you so far. It's best to take a theory or an assumption that you might have with fundraising and test it. So going back to the direct mail example, if direct mail is producing results, then do direct mail. If email is producing results, then do email. If a certain type of email is producing results, then focus on that and test things. See what really resonates with your audience and your donor base. It can be very particular per organization. It's not necessarily just one way or another. It can vary very greatly depending on what you do and who your constituents are. So don't take anything at face value. Test with your own donors, understand your own donors and what drives and motivates them. Don't necessarily just take everything for what people say. So when we think about donors and what they believe, you want to put yourself in your donor's shoes when you're creating your fundraising pieces. So think about it as you are speaking to people who don't necessarily know what your cause is or what you do, And I think sometimes it's easy for us on the inside to view things as this is how we talk about it internally, and we know a lot about the cause. And so it's easy for us to get caught up in that sort of jargon. And when you're creating fundraising pieces, be sure that you understand what your donors are seeing and hearing from you, and not necessarily how you internally are understanding the message. So basically what that means is make the piece very conversational, make your fundraising appeals, something that a general audience can understand, and a wide level of range, or a wide range of ages and demographics. Think about it from a very user-friendly perspective of how can we get our message out there in a really clear and concise way, and not get stuck on all of that internal jargon that we might have for our own organization. Another thing to think about is knowing what your particular donors are going to react to, as well as how they want to be treated. And this is a common thing, is a lot of donors feel like they're not treated well by the nonprofits that they give to. And so sometimes just sending a simple thank you note after you send the solicitation, or following up with them and saying your money went to this project or this program, it's just a really great way to touch your donor in another way and say that they're appreciated, even if it's a small level. Reach out there and give your donors some of that thanks and gratitude for their gifts. Going back to the testing, when you're thinking about how to test your campaigns, create a specific hypothesis, and then create a testing environment for that hypothesis and measure it. So, for example, if you want to see, does direct mail get renewal donors, or is it a better avenue for acquisition, for getting new donors? That could be one theory that you would test. Or you might test different segments with your emails. You might say, we're going to test, different counties within our state, and see who reacts to which message. So you might do 5 different messages for 5 different counties and test to see who's reacting the best to that message. But be specific about it and create clear metrics for yourself on how you can really test it in a way, measure it, analyze the results, and learn from it moving forward. And take risk. Sometimes we say if you're going to fail fast. So, try something during one campaign, and if it doesn't work, just flip the switch and try something different during the next one. So sometimes it's just a matter of being really open-minded and seeing what's going to happen if you take a little bit of risk and push yourself outside the boundaries. So I want to talk a little bit about donors and how we view fundraising from a donor perspective. You have a couple of different types of donors, and the first one that you might have would be a volunteer. And so this would be someone who has a lot of stake in your organization. They have a lot of buy-in already because they obviously value you, and otherwise they wouldn't be volunteering in the first place. So this is a very particular kind of donor because they probably know more about your cause than the average person. And so you might consider messaging to them in a different way than you would someone who maybe has only heard of your organization but isn't deeply involved in some of your activities. So that's one way to segment out your donors, is to say we're going to target volunteers and give them a specific message. The second one would be someone who is just introduced to your cause. So it's someone who maybe their friend told them about you, or they saw a post about you on Facebook, but they don't necessarily know a lot about your organization. And this fundraising message is going to be a little bit different because you're going to have to be more clear and more concise about what you do. Whereas the volunteer probably has that information already and you can target the message differently. But this person, it's really important to get across in a quick and clear way exactly who you are, exactly what you do, and exactly what cause you're supporting. And the last one would be someone who actually benefits from your organization. So this would be someone who, if you are a community center, this would be the people who actually come to your community center and participate in your programs and services. And these people can be donors, and it is a legitimate segment to think about targeting. They're probably not going to be the same level. They're probably not going to be major donors, but they are, they do benefit from your services, and so they have some incentives to give to your cause. So when you're thinking about targeting these different groups of people, just be cognizant of the fact that when people hear about your cause, you have to be ready. And so when you're doing a solicitation campaign, when you're putting your message out there to raise funds, be sure that you are ready to receive those donations, as well as receive that traffic to your website and receive those people who are looking for information. And this is a common mistake, unfortunately, with a lot of organizations and nonprofits, is they're getting their message out there, they're doing a solicitation, and when people actually Google them and get to their website, it's either difficult to find the about page or who they are, or maybe the information is not clear, maybe it's very vague. So we want to be sure that you're ready to get this sort of traffic in the middle of the campaign, to A, get your information across and who you are and what your mission is, and B, make it really easy for people to get involved. You don't want someone sifting through your website and trying to figure out how they can volunteer. You want them to know immediately, oh, I just click this button, fill out this form, and then I'm a volunteer. So a good thing to do maybe with your website is to have someone go through it, have someone who's not as familiar with your cause go through your website and ask them, say, try to volunteer through our website, and have them walk through the steps and watch them, maybe even record it and say, was it an easy process? Did you understand where to go? Was the form easy to fill out? All of those things are good to recognize with your website, and making sure that it's as user-friendly as possible. So now that we understand a little bit about donors and how we might segment them when doing a fundraising campaign, let's talk about how you would message to them. And this is extremely important. I come from a background of design, and I completely value visuals and photos and all these things that are strong and powerful and are going to help your campaign. However, if you don't have a strong message, great design is not going to do anything for you. So message is really the key of where you need to start and say, how are we going to connect with our donors? What kind of message is really going to resonate with them, and what kind of message resonates with our donors specifically as a specific organization? So this is sort of a typical direct mail that you might get. And you've all received these types of letters where you open it up and it's got a page of text and it's got a logo and it's got the address, and that's what you get in the mail as your direct mail piece. And it can be effective. It can raise money. It's not necessarily a bad approach to take. However, there are some opportunities here with direct mail pieces to make them a little bit stronger, both from a message perspective and also from a visual perspective. So when you're creating a campaign, so let's say you're coming to like end of year right now. A lot of you are probably working on your end of year campaigns. You're trying to decide, what should our message be? How should we focus it? What kind of stories can we tell? These are the kinds of questions that you want to think about. Think about who you serve. Think about the people who are directly benefiting from your organization or cause. Think about how you serve them. So think about the specific programs or tools or skills that you're providing them. Why is this important? And this is a very key question. Think about it on a broader scale of your organization is the piece of the puzzle. Why is this important that you're a part of this puzzle? Is it to, create a greener planet? Is it to make sure no kid goes hungry? Is it to, decrease crime, or whatever it might be? Think about that greater cause that you're a part of as an organization. And then start thinking about your successes. If someone was to ask you, what is your greatest success as an organization, and tell me about the person that was a part of that success. Start thinking about it in terms of stories. So think about the Susies and Johnnies and whoever else that you've impacted, and what they would say about, I love this organization because they did this for me. Think about it from their perspective and try to frame some of your solicitations around those stories. It's a powerful way to really connect on a personal level, and it's also going to exude some empathy from your constituents by having that personal story. You can also think about where you're going. So that's another way you could frame your solicitation is say, we have this big project that we're doing in 2014 and we need your help to support it. So maybe you're doing building a new building with a capital campaign, or maybe you are launching a new program, or maybe you're increasing your clients by 10% and so you can serve 500 more people. Those are the kinds of things that could be interesting to use as fundraising tools, especially at the end of year, to say, this is our new initiative in 2014, help support us as we move into that program. Oh, and the last one, why support is important. This is a growing trend too, is showing your constituents and the people who are receiving your solicitations, you're just being candid about your financials, being candid about your business model, being candid about who you are as an organization and how you function structurally and your staff, and all of these sort of logistics and program and operations details is becoming more and more important to constituents and donors. It shows that you are transparent, and it shows that you're trustworthy as an organization. You're being very open about what you do, and it's a way to build a really strong loyalty among your donors. The more transparent you can be, the better buy-in you're going to get from your donors to say, this is a legitimate organization. This is an organization that I can trust. So great messaging, when you're focusing on your messaging, these are the things that it should focus on. What you do, why you do it, how you do it, and how your donors can help. And creating this kind of messaging in a very short blurb, 200 words or less, is actually extremely difficult. You want to say, all of us want to say a lot of different things about what we do. We want to talk about all of our programs. We want to talk about all the different kinds of people that we serve and all the kinds of different things that we do as an organization. However, getting into all of those details gets very jumbled and confusing when we're messaging it in a solicitation. So you want to think about it in broader perspectives of, what do you do, as in what cause are you supporting? Are you an environmental agency? Are you a food agency? Are you a health agency? What in those spaces, what kind of cause are you supporting as an organization? And then why you do it, how you do it, and how someone can help. And this might take, 5, 6, 10, 20 versions when you're thinking about your messaging. Just keep writing it and keep condensing it to make it as clear and concise as possible. So this takes some thought and focus, but it's definitely worth it because it's going to resonate more strongly with your donor base. So I want to talk for just a minute about how you might frame your organization. And I love showing this picture because it's just amazing and there's so much emotion to it. And so this was an animal rights organization that used this photo to help save the seals from being extinct. So this was used in a solicitation as, donate to us because we need to save these seals and they're important to our environment and all of these things. And it's important to note how they used these photos because in reality, what the seals actually look like currently is more like this. Like they have these things wrapped around their necks and there's pollution in the water and they're dirty and they're living these hard struggles of life. However, the way that the organization framed it was in this positive photo of like, this is what we want to happen. This is where we want to see the seals be. This is our goal. And showing that really happy seal to kind of evoke that sense of hope and optimism in their donors and use that as a powerful tool rather than getting too much in the negative and nitty gritty of what's actually going on. So it's a way to both think towards the future, but also keep your organization in a positive light of we're working and we believe that we can get to this better place, this better goal of the seals being happy and healthy and, living great lives in the Arctic. So this is an example that I like to go through as just one way to think about how to message. And this is something that you can do with your own organization as well. So before you decide how you want to message your organization, you have to figure out what is the problem that we're trying to solve. So in this example here, this is a girls' organization, and this is the problem. These are the stats that show exactly what they're trying to fight against. So things like 38% of girls think that they're overweight, and medically only 10% are. That's the issue. That's what they're trying to tackle as an organization. So frame your problem. Figure out, if all of these things were fixed, we would go out of business, because that would just fix all of the problems. So once you create that problem scenario of what we're trying to fix as an organization, then you can start to frame what you are doing to actually counteract that problem. And this is just such a beautiful example of simple, clear, to the point. Our mission is simple: to inspire all girls to be strong, smart, and bold. And the reason that I love this so much is it doesn't talk about programs. It doesn't talk about chapters or where they are in the United States, or it doesn't even mention geography of what they're doing. It's just, we are here to empower girls, and that is our mission as an organization. It's sort of a big, hairy goal that you're thinking about as an organization, but if that was fixed, then that's what would really close their doors, because they wouldn't need to exist anymore. So think about that when you're thinking about messaging, is what do we do that's part of this greater cause that would be really clear when we're speaking to our donors. So then the other part of this messaging is, once you figure out that this is what we do statement, you immediately want to think about, okay, what are my people or what are my constituents going to react to when they hear that statement, or what do I want them to react to? And the answer should be, get them involved, get them to participate with your organization. And so in this case, they focused on 3 areas. One was volunteer, one was give, and one was find us near you. So if you needed help, find us near you. Or if you wanted to help someone else, volunteer. Or if you wanted to help financially, give. And so it's immediately taking that very powerful messaging statement that you just crafted, and then moving your constituents through and saying, here's exactly how you can participate and be a part of this movement. So let's talk about trends. And this is fun because there's a lot of discussion about what's good and what's not good, and what should I do and not do. And this is something that I get really excited about, because I like to stay on top of this stuff and keep an eye out for, what's happening in the fundraising world, what's happening in the design world, and I'm really delving into what works and doesn't work. So this is a fun topic for me. So text giving. We've all seen these campaigns, especially with disaster relief. They've been very effective in bringing in a lot of dollars for organizations through text to give. One of my favorites, because I'm a big NPR nerd, is This American Life did text to give. Actually, they've done several over the years, text to give campaigns. And what they do is, at the beginning of their radio programs, they'll say, you can text to give. All you need to do is text life to this number, which is like a 5-digit number, and it'll donate $5 that will go onto your cell phone bill and then directly to the organization. So the reason that text giving is kind of neat is it's a really quick, easy, and user-friendly way to get people to donate in that moment. It's a very impulsive giving. So it works well with like millennials, with the millennial generation, with, tech savvy people who are sort of innovators. It's a great way to connect with that audience. So when you're thinking about your donors and who you're targeting, if you have a lot of millennials, or if you're targeting millennials, this could be an interesting option for you to think about. The main struggle with text giving is you have to get the message out there. So for a radio broadcast, it makes a lot of sense because they have, millions of viewers. And so they're able to just include that message in their programming. It happens every week. And it's a great way to say, text right now and you are giving to our campaign. So depending on what your organization is and how you function and how you're structured, you could do this at like an event and say, pull out your phones right now and text to give. Or you could do it if you're doing like a big festival. You could have people text to give. It just, there's a lot of different ways that you can make this work, but it really depends on your organization and what your needs are and who your donors are, if it's going to be effective or not. So we talked a little bit about mobile before, but I wanted to bring it back here. And the reason is it's just so important. We all are on our phones constantly, walking down the street, texting, checking emails, all the time. People are on their phones just constantly. So when you're thinking about your campaign, think about how it's going to be viewed on the phone. Think about your website, think about your email communications, think about your social media messaging. And a lot of what can help make things mobile friendly is just include a lot of photos. I mean, not a lot of photos, but include photos as opposed to body text, and then include clear header messaging that would go along with that photo. So for example, if you're posting on Facebook, try not to make your post too long. Try to make it like 1 or 2 sentences, and talk just a little bit about the campaign, and then maybe include a photo of someone who would benefit from the donation if that person donated. And that's just a great way to, as someone's flipping through their phone and just scrolling Facebook, they're going to see the photo, going to see how interesting it is. They're going to get that few sentences pretty quickly in their mind, rather than having to stop and read a whole paragraph of text before they understand exactly what you're doing. Same with email. If you can include a photo and just like a short blurb about that person and why they would be affected by donating to your cause, that's a really effective way. So if someone opens it, they get the whole picture of what you're doing without having to read a lot of text. And that's just common, user practice on mobile. They're not going to read that body text, or they're not as likely to read that body text as they are just to see the image and see the tagline. QR codes. So this is a fun topic for me because I'm pretty opinionated about it. QR codes are still in discussion, and the funny thing is marketers really like QR codes because it's a way to track things. It's a lot of data. If someone scans a QR code, then you can figure out where they scanned it from and what poster they saw it from, and it's a good way to track, how users are seeing your advertising. However, the fact of the matter is that people just don't really use QR codes. So they're a great idea in theory, and if they were producing a lot of results, if people are using them frequently on a day-to-day basis, then I would say it's a great idea. But the fact of the matter is people aren't using QR codes. When's the last time you scanned a QR code? It's just not common practice. So the interesting thing is QR codes really took off in like Japan and Korea. And a lot of the reason is there was an education campaign around how to use QR codes and why they're useful and why they would be beneficial for you to use as you're, they have these like signs in the subways where you can grocery shop and scan QR codes of the products you want, and then that food is delivered to your home that evening. So a use like that, you sort of need to be educated about to figure out how to do it. And we've never really had anything like that here in the United States. And so QR codes just never really stuck the way that they have in other communities. So they're a nice idea. I would say try something different. They're probably not going to be used. It's probably not going to be as useful as you would like. Crowdfunding, this is another fun trend, and this is something that I've sort of gotten into in the past year or so. So the example that I'm showing here is actually one of my crowdfunding projects that I just started 2 days ago. This is a crowdfunding project for my sister's dog who has cancer, and we are raising funds to pay for her treatment. So this is a fun way to get people involved and to get really active with your cause. And this is especially a great idea if you don't have a very user-friendly website or you don't have time to invest into making your website better. Crowdfunding could be an option for having a campaign and having a solicitation campaign, but using someone else's platform, like this one's called Crowd Tilt. There's also CrowdRise, which is more specific to nonprofits. So CrowdRise, you have to be a 501c3 to participate and receive the funds. Crowd Tilts, anyone can use it. There's also like Kickstarter and things like that. So it's a great way to use someone else's platform as like a simple, easy to use, visually pleasing, easy to donate option if your website isn't quite there yet. So look into that. It's we're kind of testing it with some of our clients, and I know a lot of people are testing it around the country. So it's a great option. It raises money. It gets people involved. It allows for you to share your campaign on Facebook and social media. It's a good way to get the word out there. And especially if you can get a few key team players to say, I'm going to raise $5,000 and then someone else is going to raise $5,000. It's a way to get some support and some activation power from your biggest brand advocates who are out there kind of cheerleading for you. So if you can pick out those key people and say, will you go and ask your friends for this money, and kind of build that support base from those key players, you can have a lot of reach through a lot of different people. Social media. So this sort of ties into the crowdfunding. I mean, this is a part of the crowdfunding would be sharing through social media. But there's just a lot of different venues out there. And so it's a huge trend in fundraising to share about your cause and to share about your goals and where you're at in your fundraising progress through social media. So the thing to remember about social media is you're probably not going to get a lot of donations directly from social media. You're probably going to get the donations from things like direct mail and emails. However, social media is a great way to keep people updated on what you're doing and sort of remind them about your cause, your organization, and where you're at in your fundraising goals. So use it more as like an updating tool in your fundraising campaign. So for example, you can post and say, oh, we've raised $10,000 and we only have $5,000 left to go to meet our goal. Things like that keep people engaged and interested in your cause. And it also is sort of a thank you to say, you guys are awesome. We raised $10,000. All we need is $5,000 more to reach our goal. And it's helpful for people to have that update, to feel included and to feel like you are being transparent, and build some of that loyalty and relationship between you and your constituents. As far as what social media to use, the big ones are Facebook and Twitter. Pinterest is probably not going to be that effective for a fundraising campaign, so I don't think that's necessary. YouTube can be a great avenue if you do have a short, like 15 to 30 second clip around your fundraising campaign. If maybe you interview someone who you've helped, or you interview, or you could film like a project that you've done, or some of your volunteers, something like that. It can be a great tool. It just depends on your own budget and what you can do as an organization. So those are probably the three that I would recommend to start with. And it's just use them as a way to get your message out there and get some more touch points. I would shy away from asking for dollars too much on social media. That's a common complaint, is that this organization has asked me too many times to give money. Like I said, focus on sort of the positives of, here are the projects you're donating to, here's the things that we're using your money towards as an updating feature, rather than specifically asking for donations. So now's the fun part. We get to talk a little bit about design, which is a topic that I love. And I'm going to walk you through some examples and hopefully just get you brainstorming about what types of things might be useful for you as an organization to do for fundraising. And I'm going to walk you through some different types of campaigns, but obviously it is end of year, so I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about your end of year campaigns. So if you have any specific questions about end of year campaigns or how to design specifically for that, I'm happy to talk through that at the end. So when you're thinking about your fundraising campaign, you're trying to reach donors who may or may not know your cause. You want to think about it as a conversational tool. You want to think about it, how can we make it as simple and visual as possible, which are things we already talked about. And it's really beyond just a way to raise funds. It's a way to get your organization's message to these people. So not only is it a solicitation tool, but it's also sort of an awareness tool to build your own brand and to say, this is who we are, this is what we do, even if the people don't end up donating. So it's sort of a multi-purpose tool as you're sending it out to people. Different types of fundraising collateral. This is, just depending on where you are at as an organization, you might use different types of tools for fundraising. Organizational overview, this is probably more in the awareness side of things, but it's a way to just show who you are as an organization. Your program overview would be more detailed and show these are the 5 different programs that we run, and here's how we run them and when we run them. Maybe it would include some events that you do as well. Investment opportunities, corporate and foundation presentations. These are more of the larger, major donor pieces that you would walk into someone who's thinking about giving you, $10,000, $20,000, things like that. Getting donors involved beyond giving. So these types of pieces, once donors are kind of in the fundraising cycle, think about volunteering or, getting involved in other ways with your organization. And then stewardship opportunity pieces as well. So I'm going to show you some examples of each of these. So organizational overview, this is a great piece. And if you don't have this as an organization, this is a great piece to maybe start with. So if you're thinking about, trying to increase your fundraising or trying to think about it in a different way, having something that shows exactly what you do as an organization in a really clear and concise way, included with some maybe photos of who you serve. It's a great place to start as an organization to say, here's who we are, and you can just hand this to whoever as a basic, here's who we are. And you would, of course, want to include your website or something so that if people wanted to donate, they could. But it's more about just saying, this is what we do as an organization. So these are 2 examples of some pieces that kind of reflect that. The one on the right is for an immigrant organization. And so they're helping immigrants transition to the United States and help them integrate into their community. So on the left-hand side, it talks a little bit about the stats of how many immigrants are in that city and how many nationalities are represented, how many languages are spoken, how many people arrive each year, just some general information. Whereas the right-hand panel kind of focuses more on their programs and what they're actually doing as an organization. And including the impact on the bottom there is, I think, really powerful to say, this is how many people we're serving. We're really making a dent in what we do. Program overview. So the piece on this, these are actually the backside pages of each of the pieces from the previous slide. So this would go into more detail on your specific programs, and you could maybe feature one program on the back, like one major program, and have different versions per program. Or you could feature multiple programs depending on how you want to do it. So this is more of a traditional donation piece, fundraising piece. And this was actually an email. The reason I like showing this one, though, is it shows specific levels and how those dollars go to a specific project. So the $25, for example, says, will help serve a healthy school breakfast for one child for 1 month. And that's a great way to do it as you're thinking about your solicitations, is to say, this money is going to this specific thing, or this money is, if you give this $25, it would hit this this program or this item, or it would help this volunteer. Tying it to something specific like that helps donors visualize, how they're giving and why it's making an impact. This is a corporate, actually this is a foundation piece, and this tends to be a little bit more extensive than the other pieces because you kind of want to walk through all of your programs, all of your, the bigger issue that you're working towards. You'll want to talk about probably some of your revenue and your board members and get into a little bit more detail. So it's a more extensive piece, but you can sort of base it off of that organizational overview once that's complete and kind of build on it as you think about foundation presentation. I'm actually going to skip over just a few of these for the sake of time. I do want to talk about multi-channel and when you're doing a fundraising campaign, why this is important. And this is, not all organizations are using a multi-channel approach, but it's really important, especially as your donor base might be shifting. You might be, switching demographics a little bit, and you kind of want to be prepared for that as an organization. You don't want to be stuck only relying on phone calls, for example, to get your donations, or only relying on direct mail to get your donations. You want to think about it as you need to start building your donor base of the future, which would be like the millennial generation. Start doing that now. So using a multi-channel approach is really powerful because you're touching a lot of different demographics by using all these different channels. And I'm going to skip over some of this. So here are the different channels that are sort of available to you to use as an organization. Personal solicitation, which would just be walking up or, asking your friend for a donation. Phone, direct mail, email, special events, social media, website, mobile. These are all different channels that you could use to ask for money. So there's 3 different types of campaigns you could do. Sort of a spring campaign would be, this is the new year and this is what we're focusing on, kind of that sort of approach. You can do an awareness appeal, which would be more of just, building your donor base, trying to get acquisitions, trying to get people in to your system rather than raising funds. End of year campaign tends to be more fundraising focused because most giving actually happens in December. Over 30% of total annual giving happens in the month of December. So it's a great time to take your donors and ask for money because people are ready to give. That's when people are thinking about doing that. So here's an example of direct mail piece. So going back to the example of just the traditional letter with the logo and the address, this is sort of an alternative approach, using more photos, using some bigger quotes, using some highlighted on the left or on the right-hand side there's some highlights of filmmakers with quotes from each of them. All of that is really, it's just bringing more legitimacy, but also more emotional connection to your cause by including some of those photos and quotes. So that's definitely a good way to approach it. Again, with the email, featuring stories. This one features a short video. And then the biggest thing to remember is to just have that really clear donate now button when you're sending out your emails. Do not forget that. And you can have tons of support around your cause, but you have to remember to actually make the ask and ask people to donate. It's the most important part. And make it easy, of course. Social media. So, we talked about this earlier about posting and giving updates on where you're at and your fundraising goals and all of this. It just helps keep that touch going with your constituents. We talked about mobile, text to give, and how this could be an option. Special events, this is another way to generate some more buy-in from your donors when you have a special event. It's a great opportunity to sit them down and tell them more about what you do, maybe highlight some stories of the people who you helped, maybe even get them on stage and have them talk about their story and why your organization was important to them. It's a touch point for getting more information to your donors, which can be very compelling to give. So just be sure you have a way to give at those events and make the ask and stand up there and say, we need your help to continue this work, and here's how you can help. Again, I'm going to skip through some of these based on time. Since it is end of year, if you want to look through some of these other campaigns, feel free to go back into the presentation after it's uploaded. So direct mail checklist, this is really important as you're thinking through, what do I need as I'm thinking about a fundraising campaign and how to make it a little bit different, how to make it a little bit more unique rather than just a letter. Going back to the messaging, what's your campaign theme? What is your main kind of messaging that's going to appeal to your donors when you're sending this out? What kind of direct mail will you send? Will it be a letter? Will it be a flyer, brochure? Those are all things to think through, probably based on budget. Will you invest into photography? Will you hire a photographer? So you're going to have to schedule that out further than what, your print date is. Do you hire a designer? What other graphics are available to you? This is a great one because there's a lot of information already out there. There's a lot of infographics. There's a lot of content that you can kind of reshare. You'll just want to be sure that you have the permission to do that from whatever website you're pulling it from, but it's not a bad option at all to think about reusing content that already exists. Just be sure you get the permission to do so. You'll want to think about who's writing the content, how many addresses you're going to send to, how many email addresses you're going to send to. You'll want to think about your other communications and timing your solicitations so that you're not bombarding your constituents with emails, but it's timed in a way that they won't feel overwhelmed. Think about the outer envelope, the remit, all of this. So you guys can come back to this presentation and take a look at that checklist as you're planning your solicitations. Here's another direct mail. This one uses more icons to kind of highlight the programs and show what each of them does. There's still some demographic information and it still includes that traditional letter. So it's a way to have that letter, but make it a little bit more interesting by highlighting some additional things beyond just the letter. Remit options, you can be a little creative with this. The most important thing to remember is to just make it user-friendly, make it easy to fill out, reduce the number of form fields if at all possible, keep it simple. People don't want to fill out a huge, long, giant form. They want to fill out something that's easy and understandable. Skipping through some of these because I want to have a few minutes to take questions. With your emails, it's important to note that, it's open rates for emails is a little bit less for solicitations than it is for general news. So a typical email is going to get probably like a 24% open rate, whereas a solicitation is only around 13%. So just be aware of that as you're sending it out. You're not going to get as much of a reaction to a solicitation just because it is asking for money and people don't always want to open that kind of thing. So that's the one thing I'll note on this. Using photos, imagery, we talked a lot about this already, so I think you guys have it. Focus on the people you help. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. The other thing you can think about, and this is a great point, especially for email, is think about creating a series. So you could create like a couple different emails for your end of year campaign and say, I'm going to send my direct mail, and then I'm going to send an email a week later, and then another one, and then maybe one in the last 3 days of the year. So it's a way to kind of either highlight a few different stories or maybe give more information on a specific story, maybe talk about a couple different ways a person could give, and you can sort of figure out some of that content, but it allows for people to remember your organization, get those touch points in, and then hopefully by that last email at the end of the last 3 days of the year, they're going to pull the trigger and give. So this is a couple different email series that we did for VSA, which is an arts organization. And again, you can go back and look at all these examples after I upload this presentation. So I'm going to skip through the online design. We already talked a lot about this, but these are some great examples if you need some ideas for your website. And then real briefly, I'm just going to tell you that the most important thing with your solicitation campaign is be sure that your donation page is easy to use, because the last thing you want to do is get someone really excited about your cause and they go to your website and they click donate and then they have to click 4 more times before they actually complete the transaction, or the form is like insanely long and they don't want to fill it out. And so you're generating all this excitement around your cause. Be sure that we've got a donation page that is easy to use. So now I will take a few questions, and like I said, I'm going to upload this to Achieve Access. You can hear the webinar afterwards, and you can also feel free to shoot me an email if you have additional questions as well. Happy to respond to any of that. So I'm going to give you just a few minutes to plug in your questions, and I'll try to answer as many as I can. All right, so I got one question about, I'll just read it, I'll just repeat it. This person says, we have very small older staff and would need technical help using social media, email, newsletters, all of that. Any suggestions on how we might acquire a volunteer to teach or set up these functions? That's a great question, and I think that's most nonprofits struggle is you have a small staff and everyone's wearing so many different hats. You know, how do you make this kind of thing work? A couple different options. You could bring in maybe like a part-time person to do some like social media and tech training. So maybe you hire someone for like a 3-month period, and that person can help train your staff on how to use it effectively. You could bring in an outside consultant who maybe works on your social media a couple times a week, some sort of agency that can do that for you. You might consider hiring an intern, and it could be paid, it could be unpaid. The only challenge with that is sometimes interns take more work than they are help. So you'll just want to be sure to find the right person who can take the initiative to sort of run with it rather than need a lot of direction. So those are a couple different options. There are also some great free resources out there. You know, there are webinars like this. There are articles, there are workshops, especially if you could find like a conference or a workshop that you could attend. That would be a great way to sort of get some of that education without investing too many dollars into it. So this question is, how do you begin a texting campaign? So that's a great question as well. And we actually haven't done a ton of them, so I'm not quite as experienced with it as some of the other things. But you would have to connect with one of the big service providers and figure out how to do that, you know, when the person texts to give, it goes to their billing plan. So that would be the first logistical step to take. And then from there, I'm sure they can walk you through what the rest of it looks like. So sorry I don't have more information on that, but that's a great question. I'll give just a couple more minutes in case there's additional questions. Otherwise, I will definitely be available by email, and I will have these uploaded for you in both recording format and in the PDF format of the presentation, so you can go back and look at some of those examples that I had to breeze over. So just a few more minutes here, and then I'll wrap up. I got a question about Achieve Access. For those of you who are not a part of FOCF, if you're a part of FOCF, you should have access to Achieve Access. Otherwise, if you don't, then you'll receive this from me via email, the presentation and the PDF. Or I'm sorry, the presentation and the webinar recording. Yep, so I will, if you're not a part of Achieve Access, you'll get it via email from Monica. All right, well, I think that does it for us. And like I said, I'm happy to answer questions over email. Thank you so much for attending, and I will have this available for you later today. Thanks so much, you guys. Have a great day.